In the mansion where fortunes are made and destinies decided, Maya Brooks drifts like a ghost. Seen, but never truly seen. Mocked for the color of her skin and the poverty she comes from, she wipes the floors where others walk over her dreams. But beneath that quiet obedience simmers a fire she never shows. And when the grandest dinner of the year is announced, one meant for the powerful and privileged, a single envelope will shatter every line. She's been told not to. Cross, the Whitmore estate glittered beneath. The fading gold of a New York sunset, red brick towers, marble columns, and chandeliers that seemed to hold pieces of the stars themselves. Inside, laughter echoed through hallways lined with oil portraits and polished floors. It was a world built on old money and older pride, and Maya Brooks floated silently through it, invisible. At 19, Maya had learned the art of erasing herself. She moved quietly with a tray of crystal glasses, eyes downcast, careful not to brush too close to the silk gowns or tailored suits that sneered at the sight of her. "Watch where you're going, girl. Don't smudge the silver." Words like those slid off the guests' tongues without thought. Some didn't even use words, just a glance, a scoff, a whisper about people like her. She told herself it didn't matter. She needed the job, needed the paycheck that barely covered the rent for the small room she shared with peeling paint and distant dreams. But every insult carved a little deeper into the girl who had once believed she was worth more than the mop in her hands. Sometimes, late at night, Maya would pause in the empty ballroom, gaze up at the grand chandelier and imagine herself among them, speaking boldly, dressed beautifully, laughing without fear. But dreams like that had no place in a world where maids knew their corners and heirs knew their crowns. Then came the announcement. The Whitmore Annual Gala, Mrs. Kensington, the housekeeper, told the staff one morning. Her tone clipped. "Politicians, CEOs, half the state's wealthiest. Everything is spotless, and no one from the staff is to be seen once guests arrive." A familiar ache bloomed in Maya's chest. Another night of watching through kitchen doors as they toasted to their own importance. Another reminder that her worth ended where the dining room began. But fate has a strange sense of timing. The night of the gala arrived, the mansion glowing with music and money. Maya finished polishing the last silver spoon when Mrs. Kensington appeared again, this time holding an envelope. "This came for you," she said, confusion creasing her brow. The seal bore the Whitmore crest. Maya wiped her trembling hands on her apron before opening it. Inside, written in graceful ink, were words that made her breath hitch. "Miss Maya Brooks, your presence is requested at the Whitmore dinner this evening. As a guest." The hallway tilted. It had to be a mistake. People like her didn't get invitations. They cleared plates. But the paper was real. The signature was Charles Whitmore's, and somewhere beyond those gleaming doors, a seat at the table was waiting, for the maid no one ever saw. The Whitmore dining hall shimmered like a scene from another universe. Chandeliers blazing with golden light, crystal glasses lined like soldiers, and a table long enough to seat kings. Tonight was the night when wealth congratulated itself, where billionaires toasted billionaires and servants vanished into shadows. Maya stood at the edge of it all, her breath trembling. The dress she wore was simple, pale blue cotton with frayed seams she'd stitched herself. It wasn't silk or designer satin, but it was clean, and it was hers. She almost turned back twice before stepping through the towering double doors. The first thing she felt was the silence. Heads turned. Forks paused midair. Conversations faltered into whispers sharp enough to cut. "Is this some kind of joke?" hissed a woman draped in diamonds. "They're letting the help sit with us now?" Another man muttered, loud enough for Maya to hear. Her face burned. Every step toward the table felt heavier than the last. She clutched the invitation in her hand like a shield, whispering to herself, "You belong here. You were invited." A waiter intercepted her before she reached the table. "Miss, I'm sorry, but guests are seated at... I have an invitation," Maya stammered, holding out the card. His eyes narrowed, skeptical, before he disappeared to check with the hosts. Around her, the whispers swelled, cruel and mocking. "She's lost. She probably thinks it's a staff meeting. This is ridiculous." Just as Maya's courage began to crack, the doors at the far end of the hall opened, and in walked Charles Whitmore himself. The billionaire patriarch moved with the calm gravity of a man used to owning every room he entered. Conversations hushed. Eyes followed him. "Maya," he said, his deep voice slicing through the tension. All heads swiveled as he approached her. "You're late." "Late?" The word stunned her. Before she could respond, Charles pulled out a chair, not at the far end, not hidden in a corner, but right beside his own. "Sit," he said gently. Gasps rippled through the hall. The same people who mocked her now stared in disbelief as Maya, heart pounding, lowered herself into the velvet seat. Her hands trembled beneath the tablecloth, her pulse thundering in her ears. Across from her, eyes narrowed, jaws clenched. The whispers started again, louder this time, laced with confusion, contempt, and fear. And then, as the tension reached a breaking point, Charles Whitmore stood. He raised his glass, his gaze sweeping over the room like a verdict. "There's something," he said slowly, every syllable sinking like stone, "that all of you should know about Maya." For a long, suspended moment, no one breathed. The clinking of crystal, the soft hum of music, all had vanished beneath the weight of Charles Whitmore's words. "There's something all of you should know about Maya," he repeated, his gaze sweeping over the room. "She is not the help. She is not a guest. She is my daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. A woman near the end of the table gasped. Another dropped her fork with a sharp clatter. Even the butlers froze where they stood. Maya's own breath caught in her chest. She stared at Charles, certain she had misheard. "My daughter?" she whispered. Charles nodded, his expression lined with decades of regret. "Yes, your mother and we were young. We loved each other. But I was a coward, too afraid of what people would say, too desperate to protect my reputation. And because of that, I abandoned you. I abandoned her." His voice cracked. "It's the greatest shame of my life." Whispers exploded around the table. "Impossible. She's lying. This must be a stunt." But Charles's voice cut through them all. "For 19 years, she lived without a father, while I lived surrounded by everything money could buy. And she still found the strength to walk into this room with dignity, even when you mocked her." Maya's vision blurred. "You knew I was here all this time?" she asked, tears slipping free. "You let me scrub your floors while you pretended I didn't exist." Charles took a step closer. "I didn't know. Not at first. But when I learned, I watched. And every day I hated myself more. I wanted to make it right, but I didn't know how." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "You don't make it right by letting your daughter serve drinks at your parties." Around them, the guests shifted uneasily, guilt creeping into once arrogant faces. A senator who had mocked Maya earlier couldn't meet her eyes. A woman who had called her the help stared at her plate. The hierarchy they believed unshakable was crumbling in real time. Charles reached out, voice trembling. "Maya, I can't erase what I did, but I can choose to do better. Starting now." For the first time that night, Maya looked around the room, not with shame, but with strength. "All my life," she whispered, "I thought I was nothing. Tonight, you all reminded me of that. But maybe I'm more than you ever wanted me to be." And then Charles straightened, lifting his glass once more, his next words sending a chill through every soul present. "From this day forward," he declared, "everything I own bears Maya's name." The news spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours, every major newspaper, talk show, and social media feed in the country carried the same headline. "Billionaire Charles Whitmore names former maid as sole heir." The world was stunned. Some called it a scandal. Others called it justice. But to Maya Brooks, it was something far more personal. The closing of a wound that had been open her entire life. She walked through the halls of the Whitmore estate days later, no longer carrying a tray or scrubbing the floors. Her footsteps echoed differently now, steady, confident, unhurried. The same guests who once averted their eyes now greeted her with forced smiles. The same staff who pitied her now looked at her with awe. "Miss Brooks," one of them whispered, holding a door open with trembling hands. The title made her heart twist. Miss Brooks. It still felt foreign on her tongue, but Maya didn't return cruelty for cruelty. When Mrs. Kensington, the strict housekeeper who once barked orders at her, approached with eyes full of regret, Maya simply smiled. "It's all right," she said softly. "We were all just playing the roles we were given." Because Maya understood now. Revenge was easy. Grace was harder, and grace was what her mother would have wanted. On the day of the press conference, the estate transformed into a sea of cameras and reporters. 100 flashing lights bathed the marble steps where Charles Whitmore stood, older and grayer but with a fire in his eyes. Maya stood beside him, dressed in an elegant navy dress, her hands trembling slightly as they gripped the railing. Charles spoke first, his voice carrying over the crowd. "I have made many mistakes in my life. The greatest of them was abandoning my daughter. Today, I correct that mistake. Maya Brooks is not only my blood. She is the rightful heir to everything I've built." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Questions flew, cameras clicked, but Maya barely heard them. She looked out at the sea of faces, many of whom had once looked down on her, and felt a weight lift from her chest. For the first time, she wasn't hiding. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't small. A single tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered under her breath, to the memory of the woman who had raised her alone. I belong here. The same girl they once laughed at for daring to sit at the table, now owned the table itself.